Deb Keeney is a volunteer with the organization I volunteer with, and she called me in early winter, January, and asked if I would present. Well, I do love to talk about trails, and volunteering is very important. So thank you, Deb, for lobbying for this talk, and Fran, too, thank you. It just shows there's so many kind of ways to volunteers, and I think we all benefit by taking on tasks large and small, whether administrative or on trail or doing a garage for gear or leading trips. It really keeps our nonprofits going. So thank you, Rovers, for inviting me and having me. So I don't know how much people know or want to know. I can stay for the questions if anything I don't cover or further questions, but I'm just going to kind of move from the larger picture to the smaller. The title of my talk is Minnesota's Wilderness Trails, Ours to Enjoy and Ours to Preserve for the Future. So in wilderness designation is the highest level of protection of our federal lands. And in Minnesota, that would be the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness, which also has rules and regulation. It's located and managed by the Superior National Forest, U.S. Forest Service, USDA, actually. So when you go, not if you go, when you go, you need to be aware of the wilderness rules and regulations. And it is on the spectrum of hiking and backpacking. It is more rugged, more remote. There's fewer, if any, no signs at all. And, that's the way we like it, because there's wonderful hiking in Minnesota state and county parks and the North Country Trail, Superior Hiking Trail, but those are, with the exception of a couple segments of the North Country Trail, are not wilderness trails. So I'm lucky to work for or to volunteer with an agency organization that has a very narrow mission, and it's preserving wilderness trails. So that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. And so I hope that people do use them. I'm going to run through a little bit about getting a permit trails. And then eventually, when you've been hiking enough, you kind of notice that someone's out there clearing these trails, perhaps really clearing them quite a bit if it's a damaged trail, but most trails take annual maintenance too. So that's, I'll kind of move into some organizations that offer volunteer opportunities, and then spend a little more time on the club, the Boundary Waters Advisory Committee, that I have been active with. So thanks again for inviting me, Rovers. Let's see. Oh, my button to move forward is not moving forward. Oh, I guess I just scroll up. Okay, so you want to learn about or try a trail. And please do. I'm like, don't make it happen. Don't delay. All you have to remember, you do need a permit to hike in the Boundary Waters Wilderness. Recreation.gov. If you search and Google for BWCA permits, you may get a private organization or an advertisement for that will give you information. You don't need to look at that. The best way is directly go to recreation.gov, search for Boundary Waters or BWCAW, and then the kind of permit you're looking for is an overnight hiking. And in the off season, October 1st to April 30th, you can write your own permit, drive up, park, and keep half your permit, put half in the box, and head out either for a day permit, a day trip. You can hike in 1 mile or 6 miles and come out that afternoon any time of the year. But do fill out a permit, because the Forest Service keeps track, and it's important for them to know that people are hiking. If you're hiking in season and want to stay overnight, go to recreation.gov or to an outfitter and search for overnight hiking, and you will get a list of the hiking trails that are available. So this is a map put out by our club. We kind of have this motto, keeping wilderness trails on the map. Trails do take maintenance. So we have been working for almost 20 years on several of the Boundary Waters trails. Our recent project is the Powwow Trail. But these are some of the major trails that you probably have visited or know about. And when you search recreation.gov under hiking trails, they will pop up and you will get information about these trails. And as Fran mentioned, you guys are synonymous with the Border Route Trail. In the 1970s, worked with the Forest Service and platted that between the United States and Canada, 65 miles. And the Border Route Trail has access points along its route, which you can go to their website, learn about how to go in for a day trip or do a loop trip. So lots of information on their website. Yeah, that's enough about that. But those are some of the major trails and where they're located. Okay. This is, if you go into the Boundary Waters, you absolutely must be familiar with this 24-page documents. It's full of everything about what to bring, safety features. It's got a list of all the entry permits. This is a list here of the hiking trails that will pop up that you can get a permit for. It's got the mileage, information about them. There's information about leave no trace, the rules and regulations for going into the Boundary Waters. So this is something we have all our volunteers in our club watch the videos, be familiar with the rules and regulation. It's just the right thing and the respectful thing to do is to follow what the land managers require. Here's another site. You can search Superior National Forest. They are the land manager for the Boundary Waters trails. They also, they have non-wilderness areas in the Superior National Forest. They have biking trails, they have ski trails, they have motorized trails. So it's a big platter for them. Hiking trails is just part of it. But this is a pretty informative site. You can go to section search backpacking Superior National Forest, and each of these, the ranger districts, have a link to all these trails. It'll give you a map, how to get there. It'll give you if there's camping or not, and some information about the trail. So another good resource, Superior National Forest backpacking. I have a couple of sites coming up. This guy, we do not need to rewrite the book. He lives in Duluth. Maybe some of you know him. Maybe he's a rover. But he, a couple of years ago, put out this, and it's got a lovely name, Backpacking in the BWCA, Quick and Dirty Guide. And it's actually not that quick. It's full of resources. It's full of a lot of information, whether you've been backpacking or not in the BWCA. This would be a very comprehensive source to look at. It's found on overview website that I like to recommend anyway, sectionhiker.com. And he's got gear reviews, and he's got top 10 tents, top 10 stove, top 10, all sorts of stuff. I mean, there's endless information. There's no right answer about gear or where to go or how to go, because there's tens of thousands of products, but otherwise there would only be 10 products. But sectionhiker.com, I like to recommend that site. And this guy too, Clever Hiker, he's got tutorials. Don't be afraid of the rain, how to pack your pack, lightweight backpacking. So both this guy, sectionhiker.com, and Clever Hiker, if you're looking for basic backpacking information or to start out or to recommend to anyone, I really like these. I think they're good. They're good sites. All right. So why volunteer? Why do we clear trails? Well, this is a site from a couple years ago on the Powwow, which is a fire damaged trail. So it has more than routine maintenance. And you can see on the left that volunteer in the middle, he's trying to identify the trail. And that's literally what we have been doing is moving those, the area on the Powwow was logged. So most of the trees are not that, there aren't a lot of huge trees to move aside. So we literally go in with hand saws and loppers, and we start to move those logs off the trail. and off the tread so that you can see the tread. And the reason we do it is to be safe. We don't want to trip. We don't want to cut ourselves. We don't want to catch our backpack. We don't want to tear our clothes. We want to identify the route to be able to see mostly, for the most part, in front where the trail goes and in back where we've come from, so that we don't, so that the trail defines itself. We don't want to damage the resource, tromp off into the delicate woods or the, make sucker trails or animal trails that go off and get lost. So we want to keep the tread on a uniform tread that all of us are using. And as I said, the trails belong to all of us. The trails are public, belong to the public, belong to us as citizens. So it's up to us to help take care of them. The Forest Service has a lot of irons in the fire, including commercial interests, logging and mining. And so we who use them need to take care of them. And I also feel the last one personally is very important, that many of these trails were bought back by visionaries or individuals or small groups of people who realize their value. And I think we need to continue that history if we can. This is another kind of a dramatic picture of why we might want to maintain trails. These are all from the powwow. As I said, it was a fire damaged trail. In 2014, these cute little jack pines were probably calf high, maybe knee high. The fire was so intense that it burned the soil, that nothing was there. The fire was the fall of 2011. By 2014, these millions of jack pines were starting to, just furry little cute jack pines were, maybe 10 or 12 inches high. But a healthy jack pine with lots of sunshine can grow 24 to 30 inches a year, all in May and June. They do all their growing in about 6 weeks. So in 2016, we thought this trail was done. You wouldn't get lost on that trail. You can walk right down there. But this next third slide is just this last fall in August, and that's the same area. And those are, if they grow 24 or 30 inches a year, they're 8 to 10 feet taller than they were in 2016. And they are. And pretty soon, and there are many areas where we don't fell trees as volunteers. We do what is called bucking trees, which is we can move them off the ground, or we can lop very small trees. But it won't be long where we will not be able to be cutting those tall trees down. So there is some urgency about continuing to work on trails and not let them go back to the woods. So I'm going to move into now some of the other, the agency volunteers opportunities working. I always, BWAC has a mission to advocate for all trails in the Boundary Waters. So any trail you want to give your energy to, is welcome. So the border route, again, Fran mentioned, that was platted and dreamed up in the 1970s by the Rovers, and you guys are now still working on that and still sponsoring trips. So go to their website, and remember, we're all volunteers. It may not be totally up to date, but the border route and the KEC that follows are both now part of the North Country Trail Association. So that's wonderful. They're going to get more hikers and a little support from a parent organization. So one thing about the Border Route Trail and the Rovers is just kind of a personal story, that in the 70s, I went to the U. I started in 76. You can do the math. And I remember the Rovers at tables every year at orientation week, and I was too shy to join Rovers. So I just think there's never a right time to join. There's any time in your life cycle you can start to volunteer or start to join, because I believe it or not, I was so interested in what they were doing, but I didn't want to say hello to anybody. That was my little 18-year-old self. But you guys are still around, so thank you. So Border Route, the KEC, is also another amazing. That was kind of one of my first, was not a service trip, but I went with BWAC in 2015. It was on my bucket list. I'd been solo hiking in the Boundary Waters about 5 years and wanted to do the KEC. It's 42 miles to walk from the Fernburg Road to Gunflint Trail. And there yeah, it's 180 miles by car. I heard just last week from Eric, that it's pretty darn hikeable. It's pretty clear, and it's their 31st and 31-year anniversary of reopening in 1990. Bill Rahm, outfitter in Ely, offered $500 to any group or person that would clear the old fire trail that was abandoned after the airplanes started watching for fires. And Martin Kubik recruited many dozens and many trips over to clear the Kikikavik Trail. And it continues to need annual maintenance for sure, but it is also part of the North Country Trail Association, which is going to be a benefit, have more hikers. One more mention of another volunteer opportunity. Northwoods Volunteer Connection is kind of trying to be sort of a clearinghouse for volunteer opportunities, and they have opportunities out in the Superior National Forest, but not in the wilderness also. You can see this is from their website. Up here it says get involved. They've got skiing, motorized biking, hiking. They do invasive species. They are the coordinator for there's a program to adopt a portage, one of the canoe portages, or adopt an entry point, in the Boundary Waters. So that's another volunteer opportunity. And they also list the major trails that have trips and volunteering. We're on there, and the KEC is on there, and the border route. Okay, so this is what I happened to bump into in about 2015. It is the Boundary Waters Advisory Committee. This is our website, www.boundarywaterstrails.org. We've only had this website about two and a half years, not quite. And it's been just really, we have a wonderful guy, Zach Thorson, keeps this up to date with our trips and trail conditions. Also on our website is a trail guide as of last April or May to the Powwow Trail. So you can get on our site and look at trail conditions and get to the online. You can print out a PDF or look at the online trail guide. Up here in the corner is our contact us. And if you forget my email or want to contact me or contact the club, there's a query and we will get back to you within a few days. So this is overlooking Pose Creek, what I think used to be called Elbow Creek, but it's about 7 miles in from the trailhead, and a beautiful overlook there on Pose Creek. We also have a meetup site that organizes, and we do take a registration fee for our trips to the trail. It's meetup/Friends of BWCA. You can reach us through there. You guys probably know that. You can meet up message on your Rovers site too. If there's a crew leader or a trip or an event that you're interested in, you can contact us through Meetup. So yeah, this is, we advocate, BWAC advocates for all trails. We've worked on the Sioux Hustler, we've worked on the Brule Lake, we've worked on Eagle Mountain, but since the fire of 2011, we have incinerated the powwow. We've been, all of our crews have been going to the powwow hiking trail. I like this map. It's, I think it's probably from a vintage Superior National Forests brochure from the 70s, maybe. It's got these cute little, there's a moose on it, and there's little illustrations. These triangles are designated campsites, but most of them are burned up. The only campsites that you can camp at now are right here at Isabella Lake. This is the only restored campsite from the fire. Well, no, wait, that campsite isn't even there anymore. This dark campsite is at Post Lake and is restored. I'm going to be going through a few slides. This is not restored. There's a fire grate. The fire grates didn't burn, but there's no latrine and there's hazard trees at South Wilder. No longer a campsite there at Horseshoe. This is a canoe site. It never burned. It was saved. Probably water was dumped on that in 2011. This campsite is unrestored. It Path, unrestored at Mirror, unrestored at Superstition, unrestored at Campfire. This is a canoe campsite that is a green zone, but again, it's not we have access to it, but it's not a backpacking site. And this is unrestored at Marathon, but we are working, and we think this is the year where we are the Forest Service needs to go in and fell the hazard trees. And they have agreed to do that on 3 or 4 sites this year in 2021. So that is a big deal. And then we will be having latrines put in so that we can have safe, hygienic places to hike. So that's big news for the powwow and for BWAC. We have a signed agreement with the Forest Service to maintain the trail. Oops. So you can't talk about the powwow without the fire. So of course in North America and United States and Canada, big legacy of suppressing fires. And we knew as much as 50 years ago that really it's not a good idea to suppress fires. It results in very large megafires that burn the canopy. And really the cultures that were here sustainably before us did use fire to get rid of underbrush, to do hunting, to move animals, to control insects. So we kind of did a big boo-boo a century and a half ago by not letting these fires burn. And then of course now there's been development. So I'm sure people are familiar, Ham Lake, Cavity Lake, Pagami Creek burned a lot of the forest and did not leave the canopy. This is an interesting map. Way up here in the upper left is Pagami Creek, where the fire started with a lightning stroke, kind of percolated for 10, 12, 14 days, kind of just sat there, started to move a little bit. This Tangerine area was September 11th. But the most dramatic thing is on September 12th, the wind came up, some accelerant was put to kind of backburn with the hopes of stopping the fire. But what happened, this entire blue and red, 95% of the damage happened in 5 hours. So that is quite an incendiary, magnificent happening that happened. There's a cool, I forgot to put that on this, there's a cool film about rangers that got caught in that fire and having to being pretty confusing time. They didn't have a supervisor available. They were unsure about strategy of how to put their fire blankets out. But anyway, why do we care about that perimeter of the fire? Well, here's our beloved trail, the Powwow Trail. And this is the perimeter of that 92,000 acres that burned in 2011. And really, the only green zones that they dumped a little water here at this campsite. They dumped a little water here at Quadga. They dumped a little water here. But the whole thing was really burned to the ground. Oops, that's on another slide. But that's a cute little slide of the jack pines being these baby cute little jack pines. Oh, well. So around the trail, any trail you can drive up, there's a parking lot. There used to be a town at the entry point of Lake Isabella and the Powwow Trail. We share the parking lot here. This is Forest Center. It was there for less than 20 years, but it was built by Tomahawk Lumber Company of Tomahawk, Wisconsin. And families lived there. I understand there was a post office and a school and 80 homes and all the lumberjacks. And they went through the forest and they logged every tree that they could until they ran out to the end of got to the wilderness area in 1969. And then they took the town down. And now, a few years after that, in the late 60s, early 70s, the trail was platted out. These are old logging roads. If this is the trailhead where you park, you hike up here 3 miles and another 3 miles. This is old logging roads. So it's a fairly flat trail, not a lot of elevation. There's some boggy, wet areas. And these are also old logging roads, the south. But from the western and the northern was platted, cut through the wilderness, and and then a loop trail was made in the late 60s, early 70s. So this trail is a gift to the Boundary Waters. It was an addition. It was part of a response to increasing volunteer recreation opportunities in the Boundary Waters. They had taken away motorboat lakes and snowmobiling, and they thought they would increase hiking. And people did hike, and we're hoping that people are going to keep hiking. So back to the trail. So here's the kiosk. We got a couple of November campers there. There's a sign talking about the town that used to be there and the lumberjacks. That's entry point 86. So this is where our crews do their last safety check and have a safety talk and head out on the trail. Half a mile, you enter the wilderness, and for the remainder of the trail, you are in the Boundary Waters Wilderness. It's a 31-mile trail. This is Kai. He's coming off the wilderness, but he's happy. He's got thumbs up. He was helping on a trail for 5 days. He's got dirty knees. He, a crew of 8 or 9 in this fire damaged trail can get maybe a mile, maybe a quarter mile, maybe a half mile. It's very slow, tedious work, but very rewarding. And trail clearing is both an independent venture, and then you also get success with your crew. So I think you work by yourself, but you work with your crew. It's a fun mix. Moving along the trail, another half a mile is the first campsite that was, there's also a structure there. This is the Isabella River Bridge and the Isabella River campsite and Isabella Lake. Beautiful, picturesque, many beautiful pictures. Deb has seen that and probably cleared in that area. Yeah, it's the first, we call it our gateway. The first 0 to 3 or 4 miles is the gateway to the trail. We want to keep that nice and open because we don't want people to get discouraged hiking the loop. So it's the Isabella River campsite, beautiful campsite. It is also used by canoers, but it's a backpacking site. 3 miles later, is that right? No, 2 miles, another 2 miles to the juncture. And then anyway, 6 miles from the trailhead is this Pose Lake Spur. So these are all pictures of crew. Here's happy crew leader, probably doing a little history or safety training. Here we are under a tarp. We bring a group tarp so that we can, protection from the elements or the sun or the rain. This is Pose Lake, beautiful sunset. One of our volunteers took. Here's some more volunteers. A little, one of the few signage on the trail is to the Pose Lake, that first campsite. And that is the only campsite that has been restored. So you can go there and have the luxury of a latrine, and the hazard trees are gone, felled, and there is a fire grate. And it's only 6 miles from the trailhead. So moving along on this little map here, we're going to go north. Next lake is South Wilder, very rocky shore. We used to, there was a sign that the trail was not maintained. So we'd go in and we'd work for 4 days and we'd clear 1 1/8 and we'd move that 1 1/8 and we keep moving the sign around but we have pretty much defined the whole corridor now. This is a picture of the South Wilder campsite from the frozen winter from South Wilder Lake, a snowshoe trip. Continuing on, here's a pre-fire, mossy, beautiful conifer forest along North Wilder. Doesn't look like that anymore. Those trees are all dead and gone. This is also a 2010 pre-fire picture of a campsite with that fire grate that we were able to read. This is how it looks now. It was completely covered with jack pines, completely unfindable, completely only because of this photo and this island across from North Wilder, we were able to locate that site. So we're hoping that's going to be a great site to restore and have a latrine. It's a pretty little hike to get there. So these trees are growing. You can see there's an old standing blue diamond here. Most of those are gone. They're fun to see when we see them. And this is a pre-fire trailblaze. It's our volunteer Lucas Rodabaugh. He's standing, and on both sides of this still standing tree, it was still standing in 2020, there is an old blaze. So talk about history, people that came before us and people that used to hike that. I think that's just a really cool cool thing. North Wilder, here's a tree that was left, a picture from 2010 this hiker took, this pre-fire. There's some conifers there, huge white pine left by the loggers. Tree's still there. This is post-fire. Mark and Preston standing next to this magnificent tree. And the jack pines are coming back all around them, a sea. This is just an overlook as we get along North Wilder there. Here in the center, guy Larry Ricker, he writes a lot of trip reports on BWCA.com, photographer, went a couple times to the trail, and that is a postcard. Is that not stunning? Why do we visit the Boundary Waters? This is why we visit the Boundary Waters. Well, of course, it doesn't look like that anymore, but it will, not for me, but for my grandchildren. So it's that's a pre-fire photo, and then these are other along this western side of the trail. Rock of Ages, beautiful. The names are so beautiful. These lakes, Rock of Ages Lake, Mirror Lake, Superstition. Just some really wonderful lake names that somebody named. Here's a mega cairn on the way to Mirror. Just some sights from our wonderful trail. This is Superstition Lake. This happens to be a green zone. This is from 2018, and we did very minimal maintenance, but we still have to clear in the green zone. This was not a green zone. It was burned to nothing, but the trees again are 12 feet. The poplars and jack pines are getting very large. And this is one of our volunteers got up in the morning and caught us a fish and cooked a fish at the fire grate. So we do have fun on our trips. In addition to working, we gather in the morning for breakfast. We have get our tools. We have a safety talk. We march off to work. Sometimes it's right there that we're camping. We always camp next to water. It may not be at a campsite, but we have a water source, and we walk. We either start working right there or walk to our work site. And so we had fish for breakfast, and then we take breaks. We make sure people are drinking water. We have lunch. We quit maybe between 4 and 6. Sometimes people are so pumped they don't want to quit. It just really depends on conditions and weather and how fatigued we are. So we practice expedition behavior, where we work as a team together and make decisions together. Of course, there's always 2 crew leaders on each trip from the club that are your guides, but we do take volunteers into consideration. Now, one thing is that prior to COVID and the way that Deb got involved, is we for a couple of years we offered what we call day trips, and we were able to stay in lodging next to the trail or near to the trail and introduce people to the trail, not going overnight camping. So that has been a loss with COVID. We can't really stay in lodging together. So we're working on that and hoping to reinstitute the day trips to the trail. So day trips, and also we offer both canoe trips and hiking trips to reach the trail. So a little side point. So this is a big project from 2020, collaboration with BWAC and the Forest Service. There was a rotting bridge across this Diana Creek, and there are waterways to cross, but most of them you may get water over your boots, but this one you would get water probably up to your thigh. So BWAC went in and flagged and found some tamarack, which is rot-resistant wood, and flagged them. The forest went in later in the summer, early fall, and felled the tamarack trees, and BWAC went back and debarked them and hauled them with ropes and pulleys and built a new bridge. So we're very proud of that. So if you go anywhere, go visit the bridge at Lake Diana. You can't miss it. You walk right across it, the trail. And here's a gentleman, one of our volunteers, in the morning sunshine. We have several photographers and hikers seem to be of the same ilk. We have several wonderful photographers. That's a Zach Thorson photo that take pictures for us for posterity. So that's it for me. I think that Deb is going to talk a little bit about her experience. And then again, like I said, I can hang out for what I didn't cover or any questions or anything. So Barry, can you help me not share my, or should I just leave this up, Deb, while you're talking?
Yes, I have no slides.
There you go.
I think this is really appropriate. Thank you, Susan.
Take a hike.
So everyone, I'm Deb Keeney. I'm a relatively new rover, having joined last year. And so I just want to share my BWAC volunteer experiences and encourage everyone to, if there is interest, to volunteer. But before I do that, I just want to give a big shout out and thank you to Fran for doing such a wonderful job with these Tuesday night presentations. I saw Rovers on Meetup and had seen because of the BWAC group, and had seen the presentations when you were meeting at the university, but that was just not convenient for me. So last year, the Rovers Tuesday night presentations got me through 2020. I mean, it was so convenient to go online through Zoom and travel virtually through Rovers presentations on their trips, conservation topics. So all the people on BWAC that have joined this session, please join the Rovers meetup group, and you will be informed about all the wonderful presentations that Fran organizes for Rovers. So it helped me survive 2020. So I just wanted to put in a plug for that. So Susan's predecessor, Martin, was one of the founders of BWAC, and he retired from 3M. He gave many presentations to the 3M outdoor group, which I was a part of. So, I heard the call for volunteering and all about the fire and the wonderful pictures. And, Susan did a great job to show you the difference between where the trail was supposed to be and what it looks like, after the volunteers go through. And also we hiked in, and it's basically a moonscape after the fire. So it is quite different. And Susan did a great job of showing the before and after. So there's a lot of work to be done there. So I just wanted to kind of walk you through what it takes to be a volunteer. So there's 3 different types of volunteer opportunities: backpacking trips, canoe trips, where you canoe in, camp, and clear trail. But what I did in learning from the 3M outdoor group was, wow, trail clearing. That sounds like an awful lot of work. And Susan, we don't know each other too well, but I started college also in 1976. So you can do the math. And I still have my external frame backpack where I did all my backpacking in the 1980s. So raising kids, I just did not invest in any of all the lightweight equipment. So I didn't want to sign up for a canoe or backpacking trip and be exhausted even before helping to clear trail. So I signed up for one of the day trips. So if you're interested, you join the session or the trip. And there's a $25 participation fee that because it's an all volunteer organization. And then if you signed up for a day hike, we share the cost of the townhome. We stay in the national or the Lake Superior Forest Lake Home townhomes right in Isabella. So we carpool up on a Friday night and then stay in the townhome, get up early, work Saturday, usually, and we had community dinner back at the townhome once we got back, and then we return on Sunday. So one of the things, if you're still working and you don't have a vacation day to to devote to BWAC. It's a great opportunity. Get away for the weekend, get out with other outdoor enthusiasts, and do some good and help maintain those trails. So the first trip, once you sign up, there will be an introductory local hike. So on my first checkout hike, it was at Como Park, and it was one of the nice April days, I think in 2019, where all the St. Paul families were out. And so we met, and they kind of talked, the crew leaders talked through what was involved. And it felt a little funny walking the paved paths at Como Park with backpacks and hiking boots on. But some of the things to prepare for is that you have to have leather gloves. That's just one of the safety things. And then as you go into that entry point, there is an area by the Beaver Dam where you're wading in water. So most of us purchase these thin over shoes, basically, to go over our hiking boots to keep them waterproof up above your ankle. And so I would recommend those. And that first May trip in 2019, we had a huge group. We had a crew from Duluth that came up for the weekend. We had a big crew from St. Paul. And so the crew from St. Paul broke up into 3 groups. And to take terminology from the Twin Cities hiking group, there was the fast-paced hiking group that went to Pose Lake. And I don't think there was much chit-chatting in that group. I mean, they took a beeline to Pose Lake, and they actually scared up some moose. They said, they reported back that they were so quiet they snuck up on the moose. Then there was a middle group, so that would be the medium-paced hiking group, where they hiked to a point and then cleared back. And then I was in the casual hiking group. And there was a lot of chit-chatting going on as we were hiking. And it was just such a pleasant experience for me. We would hike until we got to some downed trunks. And because it's wilderness, we can't use motorized equipment. It would be so much easier if we could use chainsaws, but we can't. So BWAC has all the equipment available. And basically we're sawing logs. Sometimes I think our biggest log was about, this big. And so you'd be hiking along, and then we put our equipment down and take turns sawing. I think we had like 6 people in my group, so we would take turns. So it really was not, it's strenuous for me, or it was very doable, great time being outdoors, and you work as a crew. So then, we got a lot done that trip, and then went back, had a community dinner, and it was just so pleasant. Then I went back in the fall. There was a much smaller group. There was only 5 of us that trip. And rather than trail clearing, sawing logs, it was a lopping trip. And so they have these big, I call them pruning shears, very big loppers. And that's taking down all those jack pines that sprouted after the fire, and brush that are encroaching on the trail. And that one, you were working pretty much all Saturday, bending over. So my hamstrings were very sore for a couple of days afterwards. But again, with the clearing that we did, both the sawing the down logs and the clearing the jack pines and brush, it's just so visual, just like weeding. You can't even see the trail, and then you work and clear it, and then you can see the trail. So it's so immediate, gratification for your work and your efforts. So just like Susan's title about, ours to enjoy, ours to preserve. I really encourage you, if you have any interest, and unfortunately the day trips and staying in the townhome volunteer opportunities are kind of on pause. I had signed up again last May for one of the day trips, and that was canceled. And hopefully will be rescheduled, soon. So it's an enjoyable experience. You're doing, invaluable work to help preserve opportunities in a national treasure that we have here in the state of Minnesota. So great volunteer opportunity. Susan,
Wow.
did you want to add anything? Or?
That is quite a testimonial. I'm so Fran is Deb is. We hardly know each other. We've met at some events and stuff.
There was something else I wanted to mention. As a thank you, BWAC has I guess it's an annual meeting, and I think I can't remember if it was late 2019 or early 2020, but they have a dinner to thank all their volunteers. And the one that I attended was in the large community room at the Bloomington REI. And it was just a great meeting, volunteers hearing different experiences on the trips, and had an excellent chat with a couple who led a backpacking, or who was volunteered on a backpacking trip, and now was going to take the next step to lead one of the backpacking trips. So it's just a great community and wonderful volunteer experience.
Well, Fran, I love hearing you just said a lot of positive things. So thank you so much. And we try to make it a good experience and a valuable experience. And we're all really making a difference. So thanks. Yeah. And I miss these events where we can get together with all the crews or many of the volunteers. It's not quite the same. I mean, in some ways we're getting more people at our Zoom meetings, but I certainly miss meeting people in person and even welcoming people in person. So it'll be back. We have some positive indicators in the globe in 2021. So thank you so much, Fran. Deb, I'm sorry. Fran, you're right below Deb on the screen there. All right.
But, Susan, just to confirm, you are offering backpacking and canoe trips.
We are. Our trips are limited to 6. We are working, and we're not sharing any food or tools or water treatment. We're keeping social distances. If there's a household group, they will probably work together. But we're continuing, as Deb said, we do a training hike. Each of the crews have 2 leaders, and they are your guides for the whole, from beginning, middle to the end. Get you ready, check your gear, meet, plan carpools. That's another thing that's a little bit fallen by the wayside, is it's kind of our tradition to go up together. And in 2020, we had people, we kind of convoyed up to the trailhead, which is just a loss, because I really like to bring, there are people that want to volunteer that maybe don't prefer not to drive or can't drive or don't have a car. So we haven't been able to offer that. But just like our day trips, we do plan to have those returning as soon as we can and get them organized. But our trips they're limited, they're smaller. We can't, the boundary waters you can have up to 9, but we limit them to 6 just for flexibility in case of, we sign a liability for anything, inherent risk in the wilderness. And then also, infectious disease. We just don't know. We don't want people to, people need to understand they go at their own risk in some way. So we kept them a little smaller, both for exposure to anything. And then if we need to, if one person gets ill for 2 seconds, everybody decamps together. We stick together. It's all for one and one for all. So luckily we did need some flexibility this year, but it didn't really happen on trail. So our trips are full, but we will take a wait list. It is time of unknown. Most people are pretty committed, but things do happen. Family, jobs, work, illness. So if you're interested, and join our meetup, and you'll hear as new events are posted, and the other trails too. Contact them about trips they may have to their trails. or try more than one. But we have a lot of, 2/3 of our volunteers come back if they can. I mean, people, they're usually over a long weekend. The crew leaders plan themselves, pick their own. We meet together and plan routes, but they pick, it's off Thursday to Sunday or Friday to Monday or the day trip, but there are no day trips for spring and probably will not be, but perhaps in the fall, we hope that they'll be back.
So does anyone have any questions for Susan or Deb?
Mhm.
Anyone?
I have a question. Given some of the limits set in 2020, and I know that the Border Route Trail Association canceled a lot of trips. Does that mean that there's going to be a lot more need to kind of catch up in maintenance this year and maybe even next year, depending on how many trips you're going to be able to do?
Great question. We had 22 trips. We ended up from some of them were with 2 people and some of them were with 6, but we had a lot. I think, as you guys know, people were so eager after being home for all winter and May, and by fall, people were ready to hop on the trail. We had some very excellent trail clearing. And as I mentioned, for several years, we were just looking for the trail and flagging and we never make new trail. Our goal is to find the original trail and tread. And then now, so we are actually working more on what's called clearing to standard, clearing it a little wider, not just finding the trail. So we don't know, every spring there's winter damage. I actually think on the powwow for our trail, it is not going to be as intense clearing as it has been in 17, 18, 19. And yeah, we had a good 2020. Amazingly, I think people were so eager to get out, and we had a lot of leaders that wanted to jump forward. So good question.
Question in chat. What makes a site a backpacking site?
Oh, gosh, great. Well, it may not be accessible by canoe. There are the trails, Sioux Hustler or Border Route or Powwow. There, you can't get there by canoe, which is also really a spectacular thing about backpacking. Is you just very elegant. You carry your stuff on your back and you walk from lake to lake, and there you won't see canoeists, and there aren't. It's probably just by proximity. There's no way to get there by canoe. You just have to walk there. But you're right that Isabella site, a mile in from the backpack, is it's on the McKinsey map. There's a circle and a triangle, and I'm not remembering which is which, but one of them, they are designated backpacking sites, and really canoeists should not be using them. There's no way to control that. So if it's accessible to both and there's more canoers, you may be out of luck.
Is there any way to know how many people a year access the Powwow Trail?
Well, we have asked for those dates. It's always a few years behind. The Forest Service does track that. And of course, it was way down after the fire, down to a few. But so the trails are not used as much as the canoe entries. 98% of the permits are pulled by canoeists. But I think on the sister trails, Border Route and the Keck would also say that their use has really gone up in 2020. And so that's good. That's good. But when you show up or get a permit, actually permits for hiking trails are unlimited. So you don't know who else is going to be there that day. And we did see on our trips in 2020, we saw almost every work crew saw other people on the trail, which is unprecedented. We didn't see that for the previous 9 years. We would rarely see somebody all summer. If you saw one person all summer, that would be quite incredible. So last year was very, very different. So, but there aren't restored campsites right now. We hope that's going to change by the end of this season. So we have been camping off trail, which you can do as a backpacker. A canoeist cannot, but backpackers, there's certain, check our website. There's information about where to camp on the powwow without this campsites.
Great presentation, both of you. So I was wondering what the pet and specifically dog policy is on the trail, given that we are new pet owners?
Oh, well, not on a crew. We don't have pets, but you can bring I have hiked, backpacked on Boundary Waters Trail with pet. Yes. I mean, you want have them under voice control and don't have a well-behaved dog, but, yeah, clean up, throw it 100 feet in the woods or whatever you don't want, but certainly not on the trail or near the trail. But if your dog is well behaved and under voice control, I mean, you're probably supposed to have it on a leash, but I have hiked on trails where I haven't seen anybody for 3 or 4 days and my dog stays right at my heels. So it's a little fun. I'm sure there's a Forest Service regulation about it being on a 6-foot leash and certainly under voice control. But yeah, it's a pleasure to go with your dog. Now, the powwow nearly killed my dog. So I don't bring a dog anymore, but just because it's so rugged and you don't bring a dog on, we can't have them on trail on work crews.
Thank you.
Susan, there was a question on the chat. Someone went on an all-female USFS crew to clear portages and asked if there are any all-women trips available.
No, we have not sponsored that. We haven't considered that. So yeah, that would have to be a leadership decision. And I would say probably not. It's not, we wouldn't, I would say we probably would not do that. I don't know.
And then somebody just asked, are all the trips full?
They are. Thank you, Deb, for reading those questions. I don't even see them. But as I said, or it's possible we have one site, but I think they're all full. Yeah, we started posting them in January. We found that it really helps us. The earlier we can get organized, it helps us get everybody up and going. So, but we plan to be back at full strength, probably even twice as many trips or twice as many volunteers. It's a great time to go. So we may go in August, but certainly September, October, November is a wonderful time. The days are shorter, but it's cooler, easier to work. Deb knows, she was there in the fall and the spring. So we will be back. And also we've been around for 19 and a half years. We're going to be here for another 19 and a half years clearing trails. So if you can't go this year, we'll get you another time.
Anyone else have any questions?
Were there any other backpack trails affected by the fires? And by the way, some years ago, I was in a trail clearing trip, and the forest, or I know whoever puts out the fires, they actually hired us for the day, and we did we just did supplies and stuff like that. So it was fun, and it was kind of weird because not really weird. At the end of the day, they said you cannot leave until you go into this tent. You got to go into that tent before you leave. And so we all went in that tent, and they paid us, I don't know, $8 an hour. It's like I would have done it, but it was quite an experience actually. But yeah, but actually, yeah. But the other question was, were the other trails affected? I was thinking I did the Harriman Trail a while back, and I was just wondering about that. And
well, I know the western section of the border route has been burned, and the Cavity Lake and Ham Lake affected part of I probably can't address that, but fire will happen, and I don't think it's been quite the incineration that the powwow experienced, but yes. If there's anybody else that can comment on their trail, pop in.
Any other questions? Oh. Are there other trips that are not clearing trips I see on the chat?
Well, BWAC guides clearing trips. We have some survey trips, usually at the very beginning of the year, and those are also full this year. So no more participants. We may have survey trips in the fall. And so that's checking trail conditions, checking where we might want to go work, checking for the Forest Service. Are there hazard trees that need to come down? But we don't just do guided. Well, you know, we never know. Our mission is to introduce people to trails. So it depends on our volunteer group constellation at that moment in time. If we want to take people on an introductory trip, you never know. It could be very possible.